Good Wednesday to you, everybody in Com 651. Welcome to, are you ready for this? Week, boom, 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 15. At last, we have reached the end of the semester. It's kind of sad, but I'll coffee to that. What do we have? Which cup do we have here today? Oh, yes, the new Jeff Gardner Wright's cup. You know, not a national park, but still, the website's pretty cool. Took it to visit. All right, enough about me. This is the last week I'm going to post videos. Well, I shouldn't say that. I might post them at the beginning of next week, just sort of as a reminder of everything um, that we do to sort of wrap things up. But in terms of material and such and what that we're going to cover, this is going to be the last one. Okay, so week 15. First and foremost, right out of the gate, courtesy thank you to Cheryl for asking an important question about phase 4 of the PR assignment. She reached out to me and said, you know, is it that we're turning this in separately, or is it the whole thing together? That one. It is the whole thing together. Okay. So when you do phase 4 um, for the PR project, okay, on the same day, April the 29th, present the whole package. So you put parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 all together, and also your video, your presentation. Now, for your video presentation, and I'm going to write this up and send this out as an announcement, so there's absolutely no ambiguity. So everybody knows that what we're doing. We're all on the same page. Be sure to, however you film it, that doesn't matter. Make sure that you platform it on YouTube and include the YouTube link in your somewhere in your presentation, your final submission. Okay, it's not supposed to work that way. That Canvas only reads certain platforms and has a hard time with others, but it does. And I don't know why. Just a standard like MP4 file, that sometimes Canvas will read it and sometimes it doesn't, and if it doesn't read it, I can't see it. So be sure to put it up on YouTube as a platform, because that's the one platform that I have found consistently that Canvas can read. Okay, so for phase 4, which is next week, I know it's not this week, but we're talking about what's coming up. The 29th, which is a week from today. Phase 4 is all 3 or all 4 of them put together into your final presentation and your video presentation. Okay, and that will be on the 29th. Now, normally what I do is I give about a day to sort of let you go, take a rest before the final exam. So I will put the final exam, we're going to schedule the final exam for May the 1st. All right, that's the last day of class. All right. Speaking of which, okay, there is going to be, I will hold a Zoom review session for the final exam. This is completely optional. You don't have to show up if you don't want. And that will be tomorrow, Thursday, the 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All right. So here's how it'll work. I have sent the link out to the Zoom session in the announcement. I think, what was it, this weekend? Okay, April 20th, whatever that was. And the link is in there. And there's I guess it was Monday, and there's a passcode that goes with the link. And so what you do is you're going to copy and paste the link into your browser, and then when you get there, enter the passcode, and that will let you into the meeting. All right. when you come into the meeting, and I'll announce this when we get in there, please to mute your microphone. Okay, and you can have your video on if you like. That's fine. All right. And what I'll do is I'll go through, this will last about an hour, and I will go through the major stuff, terms, concepts, things like this that you could expect to see on the exam. And then when I get through reviewing the stuff, we'll use the, hit the raise your hand function when you're in Zoom, like the little cartoon hand goes, hey, me. If you have questions about anything that's covered or anything that you might be wondering about, will be on the exam. All right. And we've got just 1 hour. If we finish earlier, great. But it's going to be a hard in. It'll start right on time, a hard out. And because I'm doing another review session for a different class. All right. So again, this is completely optional. If it's something you think you would benefit from, come on in. You're not required to do this. Okay. It's just for your benefit. I know I've mentioned before, but I'll say it again. I do not pass out written review sheets. I've not had great experience with that in the past. So, I'm doing this in lieu of that. Okay. And speaking of last week of work, that is this week. So there are, some things for you to cover. There are no discussion questions for this week. I want you to be able to focus on finishing phase 4 with your teams. Okay. There are 3 chapters to read, 2 from Stacks and 1 from Scott. All right. But there are no questions. And instead, what I've done is if you look in the discussion section in Canvas, there's an entry that it's pinned up now with everything else. And it just says terms, week 15. Okay, these are terms that are touched on in your readings. And for the, the exam is like a minor adjustment in a major operation, which is the development of your skill set as a communicator. Okay. And PR if you choose to go on to it. All right. So I've taken from those 3 chapters key concepts, key terms that signify key concepts that I need you to be familiar with. And so I've listed them. Okay. It's just descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, probability of error occurrence, non-parametric analysis, chi-square test, parametric analysis, ANOVA, demographic analysis, stratification, and variable. All right. Make sure that you're familiar with those terms and that you could explain them to somebody in plain, straightforward English. Somebody said, yeah, by the way, what is meant by, inferential statistics? And you go, well, I'm glad you asked. And then, it's because you may find the term in true, false, so multiple choice, or a short answer question on the final exam, but no discussion. Okay, so that's for next week. Review for the exam tomorrow night, 8 p.m. And I put it in the evening to open up maximum possibility for people to attend. Okay, so exam review, completely optional. All right, I'll go through concepts and terms, things that you might want to know, give you a chance to ask some questions. Phase 4, which is all of the combined phases put together into the final presentation, along with your video presentation, due on the 29th, examination on May the 1st. Now, it's extremely important, right? Now, I'll send you some instructions about the exam, that you get it right, because I have little to no wiggle room in terms of opportunities to retake the test or take it if you didn't take it before, et cetera, especially in the spring, because the registrar, man, they are on us like white on rice. They ride us like circus ponies, because they have to get the information in to get the grades, because everybody is pushing towards graduation. All right. So if for whatever reason, and I mean like now, this week, you anticipate that there's going to be any problem with you taking the final exam on May the 1st, that's a Friday, you need to contact me like this week, right? Because it's not that I don't want to accommodate what you might have going. I've just got very little space within which to make said accommodation. Okay, let's take a look at the questions from last week. See what you said. See what we can add and help expand in your mind, and so on and so forth. Question number 1, concerning causation in quantitative research, define, explain, and give examples with a link of each of the following terms: variable, covariation, causation, and control. Marcella, you went last. Let's take you first. And I like the way you just sort of broke these out. That is by way of definition. Excuse me. Still, the allergies persist. All right. I'll coffee to that. Oh, that's a sad scene. Okay. All right. Variable. A variable is any characteristic or factor that can change across people, situations, or conditions. Okay. True. Now remember, be able to explain this in plain English. A variable is any really a variable is anything change, or a change in something, a behavior, development in a person, growth, any one thing that you want to look at in relationship to another. In fact, the term variable has no operational definition. That is, the definition of it really doesn't mean anything unless this one thing, how happy do you feel, is considered in relationship to this other thing. How many chocolate chip cookies did you eat today? I'm making that up, okay? Because the term itself, variable, speaks to the change in something. Okay, understand? All right. Okay, next, covariation. Two variables change together in a predictable pattern. As one increases or decreases, the other one tends to do the same. In public relations, you might track whether residents' trust rises when communication transparency increases. If the higher transparency consistently aligns with higher trust, the two variables show covariation. Okay, yes. Covariation means that, and in fact, in quantitative research, however you apply it, you're looking for the presence or absence of covariation, and you're going to make a statement about that. You're going to say, as this factor, thing, event increases, this one goes down or up or doesn't move at all. All right, that's the whole point of the quantitative research process, is to see what, if any, covariation is going on. Okay, causation. Causation means that one variable directly produces a change in the other. Good. All right, and again, in fact, as a researcher, both quantitative and qualitative, by the way, you are concerned with causation, not correlation. Now, this is something that you got to just like it's just got to be like automatic, like rolling over in bed for you. Okay, the understanding that correlation is not causation, because things happen in sequence with each other, either one following the other or at the same time, doesn't matter, does not mean one is causing the other. It could be that as these two things happen together, there are other causes behind each of them pushing them along, and it only looks like the one is influencing the other. All right, so you're always concerned with causation, and it's not like you have no concern for correlation, but the thing that you're aiming at is causation. And finally, control. Control means holding certain factors constant so they don't influence the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. This prevents outside influences from distorting results and strengthens internal validity. If you're testing whether a new social media strategy increases resident engagement, you might control for the time of day, platform algorithm changes, audience size. Keeping these factors constant ensures that any changes in engagement is more likely due to the strategy itself rather than unrelated variables. Okay, all true, but again, to put that into simple language, okay, control means when you set up an experiment All right. You need to have some portion of the group that you're experimenting on, and we call that the data set. Okay. Some percentage of that or some part of that you do not subject to whatever you're testing. So this happens all the time, for instance, in medical research. All right. If you want to find out if a certain drug helps with weight loss, so you take a group of people and you give them the drug. And then you monitor what they eat and what they weigh. You take another group of people who eats similarly in terms of calories and food type to the group that you're giving the drug to, and you do not give them the drug. That group is the control group. And you watch the two over a period of time. And you see if there's any difference in the weight. Does it stay steady? Does it go up? Does it go down? Between the group that is not getting the drug but behaving in a similar way to the group that is getting the drug and behaving in that way. Okay, that's called the control. Now, unless you can take the group that you're studying and isolate them, that is, lock them up and limit the influences that come into the group, whether it's what they watch, what they eat, how often they sleep. It's very, very hard to have really good and something you could call a true control group. Because unless you as a researcher can control what's coming in to the mind and the body of the group that you're trying to study, there's always a certain unknown factor. So when you're dealing with PR, be very, very careful about being convinced of an effect of an impact, saying, oh well, when we do this over here, like, woo, look at how high it rose up in this group, and then in the control group it didn't move at all. And that just means that that must mean that solution X, whatever you're doing, is fantastic. It's the best thing since Frosted Flakes or whatever. Maybe there were other factors hitting the control group that kept the response down and had nothing to do with process that you were testing. So be careful in public relations in which you have subjects, which you have, we call it data set. You have a group of subjects that you can't isolate what goes into their head or what goes into their body. This is why, for example, when there are judicial proceedings, when there are jury trials that involve highly consequential outcomes, like the person could possibly be sentenced to the death penalty. It really should be standard, but it often comes down to what the community can afford where the case is being tried. But it should be standard that the jury is sequestered, that they are isolated, that they have to stay in a designated controlled spot with say no access to the media. Because if it's a high profile, let's take, for instance, the defense has been doing a splendid job of dragging its feet. The trial of the man accused of shooting Charlie Kirk. Okay, high profile case, lots of media trends, influences that could influence the deliberation of a juror. I don't know if that jury is going to be sequestered, but it really should. They should be kept in, and no, not fun. They should be kept in rooms in which they are not allowed to watch media. Their phone should be confiscated, because that's the control, to try to make sure that they pay attention to the case and just the case, and none of the other influences that are going to be coming in through social media, through legacy media, new media, all these sorts of things. Okay. If there was a great documentary, I think Netflix did it, concerning the court case, the trial, the dispute between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Watch that if you can find it. All right. I think it's on Netflix. It's a fantastic study as to why you need control groups when you're doing public relation, because it's very clear from that documentary that Johnny Depp and his defense team knew how to leverage social media to influence the jury. And they did. In fact, so much so, and I'm not wading into whether, there should be defamation on the part of Johnny Depp or Amber Heard. I'm staying out of that. That's not my point. Okay, we're looking at this purely from a public relations perspective. That so much so was social media, what was posted on social media influenced the jury, that Johnny Depp met with and personally thanked some of the key players in the social media movement that favored his side of the story as opposed to Amber Heard's side of the story. Be careful, to have controls when you do public relations. Or, if you're in the business of winning for your client, understand how effective taking all the controls away can be. All right, question number 2. Explain the difference between pre-experimental design and true experimental design. Oh, this is pretty straightforward. Kai, pre-experimental design is a simple way to study something without using random groups or control groups. For example, a school might give a student a new lesson and then ask how they feel about it, but there's no comparison to students, or give students who did not get the lesson. A true experimental design is more careful because it uses random assignments to split students into 2 groups. One gets the new lesson, the other does not. Then both the groups are tested before and after. This helps researchers understand if the lesson has really made a difference. Okay, yes, exactly. Okay, and just as the names imply, pre-experimental and true experimental. Okay, now they're not exactly synonymous. The pilot project, sometimes people mistake this for pre-experimental design. Pilot project means you actually have all of the elements of a true experimental design in place, but it's on a very small number of folks. It's a small data set. It gives you a sense if there's a there. All right. So that's different. Don't get those two confused. Okay. Question number 3, the last question. Answer the following question. How does experimental design methodology enhance public relations? Okay, and I think it was you, Carolyn. You went first. We'll take you first. And I think it was you in question number 1 that noted that your authors point out that many people in PR don't know a lot about experimental design. They don't have time, and that's true. You take that for each and every one of you as the potential as a value add for your career, because it is true. And those people that do understand experimental design and can do it quickly and accurately, you will never run out of work or the chance to make money. I guarantee you. How do I know this for sure? Because I did the same thing. Okay. I mean, it varies as to how estranged people are in a given industry from quantitative or qualitative research. I mean, some people, they understand the terms and stuff, but they just don't have time or the interest or the ability to do it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, this is like magic incantation. This is like Merlin stuff to them. It's like, ooh, how do you do that? All right. Wherever the person or the organization falls, if you understand it, that's a value add. Okay. But Carolyn, back to you. Stacks says that experimental methodology enhances public relations because it tests relationships that have been theorized or hypothesized and adds that information to the field's body of knowledge. Okay, yeah. Now remember to be able to put this in your own words. Yeah. So what experimental design does is it takes, I mean, look, as people, as analysts, we're not devoid of a relationship between a hunch and an actual trend. All right. It doesn't mean because you have a hunch, it's completely, out in left field and there's no connection to what's going on. But a hunch is not a statement of a causal relationship. Okay, because hunches can be influenced by a lot of other things besides the evidence of a causal relationship. Hunches can be influenced by personal bias, by history that you may or may not be aware of, is still sort of floating around in your head. So experimental design and good experimental methodology can test those hunches to find out if there's really a there, if there's really a something going on. Okay, and it's a value add to the organization. It's a value add to the field. Okay, everybody, that's it. Last of the questions. Last of the readings this week. Now remember, tomorrow night, it's in the announcement. The link, you just pop it into the browser when you get in. You put in the passcode. We will start, on the dot at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and then we are out by 10. By 9. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Because directly after, and some of you who have both the 651 and the 831, you've seen this. Because directly after, I'm doing the same thing. That is, I'm providing an hour in which I'll do a review for the 831. Okay, so in at 8, out at 9. I'll spend the first part going through key terms, definitions, concepts. Then I'll turn the floor over to you to ask questions. All right, everybody, you're doing great. Okay, keep on it, keep it on. I will be grading and now finalizing all of your discussion sections. So windows closing, if there's any ones that you haven't finished up to week 13, get them in there. Okay, and good luck with pulling together the last of your PR presentation. I look forward to seeing the presentations in their totality. All right, as well as your video presentation. Remember to platform it on YouTube so Canvas can read it and I can read it. Okay, everybody, have a great week. I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for you, and I will see you, for those that care to attend, tomorrow night on Zoom. All right, God bless. Bye-bye.